Welcome to Scanner School session number 94. Today we have a very special guest. All the session notes can be found on our website at scannerschool.com/session94. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, or maybe you are a repeat listener or serial listener and you haven't yet subscribed, make sure on your podcast player you click the subscribe button so that you get next week's episodes and all future episodes delivered right to your device so you don't have to go looking for them. It makes it nice and easy to know that every Tuesday morning the podcast will be delivered right to your device. Now, if you are still listening to this podcast on the webpage, that's fine. I totally get that. You can find the latest podcast by going right to our homepage, and on the right-hand side will be our latest podcast in the podcast player. But if you want to go back and you want to know when the new one's coming out, make sure you subscribe to our email newsletter. The email newsletter comes out weekly, and it just lets you know what's going on, not only behind the scenes here at Scanner School, but also what is coming up on the podcast. So again, you can subscribe to that just by going right to scannerschool.com and looking for the email newsletter banner at the top of the page. So make sure you look for the subscription form right there on our homepage at scannerschool.com.
Welcome to the Scanner School, a podcast dedicated to the scanner radio hobby. Class is about to begin. Here is your host, Phil Lichtenberger.
So welcome back to Scanner School. Again, my name is Phil Lichtenberger, and this podcast is here to teach you everything you need to know about the scanner radio hobby. Today we have Chuck Gysi being interviewed, and Chuck is the editor of National Communications Magazine. And this magazine has been around, nearly forever. And it's one of the magazines I subscribed to when I was just getting into the scanner radio hobby. Now, Chuck, again, like I said, is the editor. We talk a lot of stuff here on this interview, and we'll clear things up after the interview comes in. So make sure you listen after the interview to understand how to subscribe to National Communications Magazine, because we kind of just breezed over that really quickly in the podcast. Now, again, there's no affiliation here as far as me earning any commission like that. This is just a straight out recommendation. Love this magazine. Like I said, I remember subscribing to it way back when, and there's something that is brand new in the National Communications Magazine that Chuck talks about, and we'll talk about that right on the opposite side of the interview. So we're going to jump right into it. So again, everything we talk about today can be found on our webpage in our session notes at scannerschool.com/session94. So let's jump right into the interview. Here is Chuck Gysi from National Communications Magazine. Guy, welcome to Scanner School. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share some information about our publication and tell you a little bit more about it.
All right. Before we get into the publication, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you got yourself started in the scanner radio hobby?
Well, we go back a long time.
We got plenty of time.
My dad was a volunteer firefighter, and he started back in the early 1960s. Well, that brought alerting receivers into our home way back then. This is even pre-Plectrons, I believe. I can't remember the brand name at the time. But, whenever it went off, everybody scrambled to the dining room to hear where that fire was. As scanners started coming out and about, we had a Regency crystal scanner that we brought into the home in the about 1968 or so. And we're able to, we had put crystals in it for all the fire, police, ambulance, and some of the surrounding towns as well. And we were able to keep tabs on that. And, I just was always very interested in listening to that. As far as hobby radio, that's one component, obviously. And then, National Communications Magazine covers a wide gamut of hobby radio topics. And CB radio, I can go back into probably the early to mid 1960s as well, getting those 100 milliwatt, 27 megahertz CB walkie-talkies as a kid, and you'd hear other CBers on there talking, and I always wondered what they meant by breaker. I kept hearing breaker, and we always thought we were maybe interfering with others' communications by that. Kind of expanded on that in junior high school, getting more into the CB hobby, and along the way got licensed as a ham as well in 1982. And then GMRS is another component of that hobby radio. I've been licensed on GMRS since 1977. I did a check the other day. I was just curious. I knew the numbers were kind of up there. As far as the longevity of GMRS licensees in the United States, I have the 11th oldest personal GMRS license in the
Wow.
United States. And I have the 23rd overall oldest when you count in some grandfathered business and government licensees. So I've been interested a long time in radio, and it's a real natural for me to be at the helm of National Communications Magazine, as well as all the other stops I've had along the way, is in the same vein. So I've worked with other publications as well, and have had a lot of fun. Writing about hobby radio is fun, and having others write for me is fun. Working with them as well. So it's a good mix.
So you're kind of also like an early adopter, it sounds like, too, because you went from before the Plectron to having the Plectron to a crystal control scanner, like just you said, too, about being one of the early few GMRS licensees. That's, you're right there up front with everything, it sounds like, which is also good, too, because it sounds like, back in the days before there was internet, right? I mean, how would you find out about GMRS licenses or how to apply and all that stuff? So you obviously know how to do the research and find your way around how to get things done when it comes to what it is you want to do in the radio hobby. So that's very, very interesting to see. So, I mean, that's unbelievable. So National Communications Magazine, let's talk about that because we've touched on that just now. What exactly is National Communications Magazine? Can you give us like the elevator pitch as to what that is?
Exactly. Our key words that we like to use as far as telling who we are, we're America's hobby radio magazine, and that really sums it up. We deal with hobby radio topics, and we're primarily based in the United States. We do have readers all around the world, though, who are interested in radio systems, and a lot of things can translate to them as well. We have quite a few readers in Canada, too. The National Communications Magazine was founded way back in 1988. We come out every other month. And like I've kind of mentioned, we cover the hobbies of scanner radio monitoring, as well as Citizens Band and the Family Radio Service, the General Mobile Radio Service, GMRS, and the Multi-Use Radio Service, which is MERS, and two-way radio in general. So we have kind of homogenized. It's kind of morphed a little bit over the years. It was mainly, at one time, mainly scanning. We had a lot of CBers who came into the fold because we had some agreements with some manufacturers at the time, so we added CB into the magazine. It was about the mid to late 1990s, I think. So, and we've kind of added in GMRS and FRS and MERS as well. We don't touch ham radio. And that's because there are plenty of publications out there that deal with ham radio and are good at it. We don't need to go into that field. So we kind of stick to what we know well, what our readers resonate with well. So we stick to those topics. Scanning is our number one. CB is right up there as well. And then we kind of touch on the GMRS, FRS, and MERS as well.
What about shortwave radio listening and utilities? Is that something you guys talk about too, or no?
No, we've kind of stayed away from that as well. Because there are, shortwave listening requires some different type of equipment. But on the other hand, if we see something of note of interest about shortwave, we share it on our social media channels. So we know some of our readers obviously cross into that, but the biggest thing about our magazine is we try and keep a very narrow niche. And by doing that, I think we have a specific readership. So you kind of dilute yourself. You go off in different tangents with ham radio and shortwave. Not to say that there wouldn't be a great venue out there for those topics, but we know what we do well, and we try and focus on those, and our readers resonate with that, and it shows in terms of the response we get.
Okay, excellent. And one of the things I do like about your magazine is like when you first open it up and you get like the news that's happened recently. And I know on one of the most recent ones too, there was somebody in my neck of the woods who decided he'd have a good time and start a keynote on the Medcom channel. So I didn't hear about it here locally, but I did read about it in NatCom, National Communications Magazine, that this local person got a little knock on the door from the FCC and is got to try and fight writing them a check now. So that's always an interesting column that's at the beginning of the magazine as well.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we do is try and comb a wide variety of resources for information and news that is of interest to our readers. And If it's so urgent that we can't sit on it, we get it out on our social media channels, obviously. But if it's something that doesn't have that great time importance, we definitely include that in our roundup. And our readers like to see that information. They want to know things that can affect them as a radio hobbyist, and that's why we do that. So that column is very important to us, and that's why it's so far front in the beginning of the magazine.
Right. And I know also a lot of information between cover to cover, which is definitely great. So you said before you publish just every other month. That's the schedule you guys are keeping?
Right. We publish every other month. So it's January, February issue, and then we have March, April, May, June, July and August, September, October, November, December. And they usually come out right about the first of the month. And we post them online. Well, we don't have a printed magazine. We discontinued the printed publication several years ago. And we offer only an online version of the publication. It's a PDF format, so it's easy to download or read in your web browser, however you want to do that. And then you also get access to every issue of the magazine, published going back to our start in 1988 as well. So there's plenty of reading there. We've been around for 31 years. No hobby radio magazine has lasted that long in recent vintage. So we're proud of that, and we've got a lot more years left in us to go yet.
Right. I remember as a kid reading National Communications Magazine is one of the magazines I subscribe to. And I mean, I understand why you go from print to digital, but to me, I mean, I miss those paper days. That's one of those things. But I do find it interesting, though, that, I mean, while a print magazine is always great, you're kind of limited to what you can keep on hand or what you're currently getting. But it sounds like if somebody were to go on the website right now and subscribe to National Communications Magazine, they would get every episode going back since 1988 included in their subscription. Is that right?
That is correct. You're right. It's for some, a print version is what they want and what they prefer. Unfortunately, we'd be out of business if we were still printing. The cost associated not only with printing but also postage, and that goes up every year. And we just could not continue to sustain that model, and we made that switch early on enough, whereas other publications did not and were not able to maintain their print publication and literally discontinued their operations. But we made that switch early enough that we're able to sustain ourselves. We don't have that worry about that increase in postage every year or even printing costs going up every year. So we are there, and we will continue to be there for quite some time. You're correct. When you sign up for the magazine, you get an online access account, and we send you a username and password that allows you to access not only the current issue of the magazine, but then you can go back and look at all the back issues of the magazine. 31 plus years of magazines on our website gives you a lot of reading.
Certainly does. Also gives you a lot to look back on. So if you were, in the hobby many years ago, you get an opportunity to go back and see what things were like many years ago when, you first entered, or maybe you might find that first radio that you were looking at, or the one that got you in the hobby. It's always good to go back and reread some of those old articles and just look at even some of the ads that are in there and stuff like that. I know personally I like going in and looking at some of the ads. I know I tripped over one just recently for the Pro 2004, and the price tag on it was a couple $100. And when you go back and look at the inflation value on what that $400 or so would have cost you then versus what it actually is now, and you think about where the current price point is of the upper tier scanners, they're really not so bad considering what things used to cost, if you compare apples to apples. So to me, I think going back in time and looking at some of the older releases as a part of the current subscription cost, I think that is a unbelievable benefit and bonus that you are offering to anybody who wants to sign up for the magazine. So speaking of which, how would somebody subscribe currently to the to National Communications Magazine?
It's actually pretty easy. What you do is you go to our website, and that is www.natcommag.com, and you go on there, and there's a link to subscribe. You go to that page, and there's a little pull down menu. You can subscribe for 1 year, 2 years. We also offer the option of just buying a single copy of the magazine for $6. The 1 year for 6 issues is $25. 2 years is $48. So you save $2 that way. And you can also add on the Mr. Scanner FCC Database frequency CD as well if you wish to purchase that, and there's additional costs for that you can add on to your order. And it takes you to PayPal, and PayPal processes your payment. You don't need to be a PayPal don't need to have a PayPal account in order to do that. So don't let that hesitate. You can also mail us a check. That information is also on our website, our address. Send a check for $25 or $48 to our address on the website, and we can certainly process that as well and get you your username and password that way.
Excellent. So you talked before that you're the publisher of National Communications Magazine. Would that be the role that you say that you have, or what would you, lead editor? I mean, I'm not really sure on the digital side of your printing side.
Sure. No. Yeah, exactly. No, I am the editor and publisher and the owner. And back in, I started out with the magazine in 1996. Now there are people who know my byline. I've been around quite a while. I've been with other publications over the years, and this was a natural for me to get involved with this. But some of your readers probably remember Popular Communications. I wrote the scanning column for that from 1982 to 1996, and I actually served as its editor from 1995 to 1996. And then I freelanced again for PopCom probably about 2011, 2012, in that time frame. I've written for other publications, including Monitoring Times, another hobby radio magazine, even some of the old ham publications like 73. Some of your folks have been around even a good deal, maybe remember the Radio Communications Monitoring Association, RCMA, and the newsletter it produced on a monthly basis. Well, I was a column editor for that for probably over 10 years, from about 1977, 1987 or so, and actually served as its editor from 81 to 83. And I had some other roles along the way, too. There's a magazine that CQ Publishing produced for Radio Shack stores called Radio back in the 1994, 1996 timeframe. And I was a writer and consulting editor for that. I've been an expert witness for scanner cases, in one case in Philadelphia where there was a law prohibiting the sale of scanners in the city of Philadelphia. I was brought in as an expert witness by Uniden to testify in that case. I've also provided frequency databases for certain scanner models that were produced by a variety of manufacturers, actually, before we had things like Radio Reference to pull databases from. Some of you folks on the East Coast and the Midwest may remember a publication called Scanner Master. And I produced 6 versions of a Philadelphia area guide for that. Scanner Master also produced the Monitor America book, which is a nice thick reference material that has scanner frequencies for the entire country in there. And I was a states editor for that publication. That was quite some time ago. And then who doesn't forget Police Call publication, which came out every year and had chunks of frequencies in regional editions covering the entire United States. And I was a trunking editor for that publication back in the 2000s until its last publication of that book. So that all gave me a good way to get into the operation with National Communications. So I became editor and publisher with the July 2014 issue, and that was mainly because the publication owner, since he started the publication back in 1988, is Norm Shrine. He decided to retire and wanted to take that operation off his plate. So he approached me, and I was in a good position at the time to be able to take that on. And we basically moved the offices of the magazine from his location in Kettering, Ohio, to here in beautiful downtown Aledo, Illinois. And we try and continue on the success of the magazine from the past and make us better with each issue that comes along, and make sure that we're resonant with our readers and providing them with the news and information that they look for in terms of a hobby radio publication. Make sure that scanning information is there, telling you the basics of how to go about the hobby and learn more about the inner workings of your scanner, give you some ideas of things you can try. I mean, it's a never-ending basis.
Yep, and so is the hobby of scanning. It's like there's always some little thing that you can, like I said, that you could try with the hobby. But it sounds like you definitely have a long career with writing about scanning. And congratulations too on the 5-year anniversary that just passed on.
It is
on being the editor. Yep, exactly. So that's awesome. So you basically you then have a team of people working for you. Are they based out of that office, or they work remotely, or how does that work?
No, everybody works remotely, and be very honest, it's a freelance staff like most publications. We've had a variety of contributors over the years, and in addition to myself, we have Mark Haberstock, K8 MSH. He's one of our lead writers, and he writes on a regular basis for the publication and covers a variety of topics. Mark is very well-versed in hobby radio. He can write about scanners. He can write about CB. He can write about just about any GMRS, any topic. So he's very versatile, and we work with him on a regular basis, and he does a great job for us. Our associate editor and publisher, Lisa Stevens, she's my wife, and she produces the news column and occasionally some other articles as well. And Roger Dumont Jr., he usually handles some special assignments for us, especially when we need to get an article into production pretty quick. He can usually turn it around and get it to us. So we have others that contribute on a regular basis, off and on. They may write for us once a year or a couple times a year. So we have a lot of people we turn to and try and keep that information that has a different flavor. Every writer has their own style, and I don't try and change that too much. I am an editor by trade. I have a long time career as a journalist, so I can work with a lot of writers, but I do edit articles. That's your job as an editor, and we try and produce a clean publication that I don't think you'll find any typos in it, which you see a lot in today's journalism world, unfortunately, but we try and keep the publication in good shape and have the best writing that we can to present to our readers.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up at the end, too, because I know my local newspaper that's here, not to really spill the beans of who they are, but it's always funny when you go online and you look at their social media. It's always, people just pick them apart. It's like, oh, another, half written article by such and such. It's amazing that just to point exactly what you said about the misspellings or stuff like that. So, the job that you have as an editor is one of those thankless and very difficult jobs sometimes. So I feel bad for you.
Right, and it's something I take serious. I've been a newspaper editor for a long time, as well as working with the magazine. So, and I see the lack of staff that's out there today, and the editors' hands are tied. They have a lot of work to do, and it's funny. I worked for a newspaper in New Jersey back in the 1980s, and I pulled out a photo of the staff that was taken on the front lawn of the newspaper's plant back in that day. And I showed it to my wife the other day, and I said, look at all these people. There were dozens and dozens of people at this paper working in the newsroom back then. And today, they are just reduced to a handful working in a storefront. It's been a change, and they're trying to put out the same product, basically, but with less people to do that. I've learned to be a good editor. I am good at what I do, so... And not to get into the journalism thing too much, but that's very important to me, to produce something clean and clean of typos and looks attractive in terms of the design, and that's very important to us at National Communications as well. And that's one of the things I bring to the magazine because I'm proud of it, and there's a lot of pride that comes forward because of that.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that there is definitely pride on your end by just reading the magazine, which is, you do a really great job at making sure things are all done correctly and everything else in there as well. So it's definitely a great magazine. So you have freelance people who submit stories to you. Now, are you open to taking like one or two articles from somebody who just has an idea they want to write about, or what would that process be like if somebody has something they want to submit a story to you?
Absolutely. I'm always willing to work with new writers, and that's, as the role of an editor is one where, and I enjoy working with new writers. So what I want to say is, don't write an article and turn it into me and say, can you use this? Because you've probably wasted a lot of time between us. Because either one, I'm going to have to rework it or bounce it back to you and say, well, this is really the better way to go. Or I'm going to say, nah, that wasn't a good idea, and you just wasted your time producing it. So, and that's just being honest and being respectful of people's time. So what I ask people to do if they're interested in writing for us is to query us by email first. Send me a proposal. Kind of give me a basic outline of what you want to accomplish with this article, maybe some bullet points as far as what you plan to discuss in your article. This is very typical of any magazine as far as a writer wanting to produce an article for that publication. So send me a synopsis of what you're thinking of producing, and I'll come back to you and say, well, that's a great idea, but I think you might want to take this approach, or you might want to include this additional information, and let's make sure we get some photos of this, because the writers also are responsible for producing their own photos and graphics that come with the article. So if we can have that discussion beforehand, it just makes a better approach to putting it all together, and it saves everybody time on both ends, I think, by doing that. Like I said, you may pitch me an idea, and I say, that doesn't work for us. And yet you've sat there and written an article on the greatest shortwave station in history, but I can't use it. So by all means, send an email to editor@natcommag.com. I don't like to get them by fax. I don't like to get them by letter in the mail. Send an email query, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. And you're right, though. It is kind of a difficult process sometimes, too, to be on the writing side and then try and figure out what would be a good fit. Because I know I did some writing way back when. I think it was an online publication called Scanner Radio Digest. It was an email-based type of thing as well. And it was tough because I knew I was supposed to write about like New York scanning, but you'd always have to wait till like the last minute to write it because there was so many changes going on. You didn't want, by the time you'd write it and go to publication, it's difficult to write about what happens right now or updates in an area. So always found that to be difficult. And there was another publication I wrote for as well, but that one went belly up really quick just for the same reasons why you've changed Miles. He went from digital only and decided, I have to go print. And as soon as he went print, that was kind of the end of that. He couldn't pay his bills and his staff and his writers and everything else. So unfortunately, that one folded as well. But it is very tough to be on the writing side as well as the editing side. And you're right, though. Good communication between yourself and somebody who would want to write from you, especially right out of the gate, is definitely a time saver and to make sure everybody's on the same page. So yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to write for you, I would strongly suggest syncing up with you first instead of just saying, "Hey, here's my article. Can you use it?" Because that's definitely not a good approach to going forward.
Exactly. It's a partnership, and I want you to succeed. That's the bottom line. If you've got a great idea, I want you to write it, and I want you to succeed. I can edit it till the cows come home, but I want you to tell me how you're going to approach it, because then we flush it out. And as a longtime newsroom editor and manager, this is how I worked with reporters in the newsroom. You have an article, let's talk about it. And then literally I had many reporters that sit down and look over my shoulder as I edited their article because I wanted them to learn why I'm making changes and such. So by having that communication, it just makes for a better article. And by having better articles, it makes National Communications a better magazine.
Yep, I definitely agree. So let's change gears really quick here because you definitely touched on something I want to go back on. So you talked about the Mr. Scanner Fcc Database. Can you touch on what that is?
Sure. That's produced by Norm Shrine, who is Mr. Scanner, who was our previous publisher. And we have a partnership with him. And basically, if you want to get that CD carries the entire FCC database for the United States on it. So you can search out frequencies and information on those licenses. So you could type in, for instance, tell me everybody in the state of Missouri who uses 155.160 megahertz, and it would sit there and bring it up for you. Or you could go in there and say, tell me everybody who has an FCC license for a frequency that you listen to on your scanners in Glenside, Pennsylvania. And you could get a list of that and then see all those and review it and you say, well, there's a great frequency I probably should be listening to, and punch it into your scanner. So it's a great resource, and it's updated on an annual basis. We provide that at a slight discount when you subscribe to the magazine, and Norm actually drop ships that from his location in Ohio for us. It's just, I wanted to continue. This was offered previous to me taking over the magazine, but I think it's a great service to our readers. We sell several of those each year because people are interested in getting that information source. So we continue that partnership with Norm, and it's one that our readers like to take advantage of.
I remember seeing Mr. Scanner too. Reminds me a lot about when I would program radios using, was it Don Starr's software? Or he had a software that was always, import from Mr. Scanner was always one of his options on there. So I know that software goes way back as well. So
sure,
I'm sure the interface on it though is a lot easier to use than to go on the FCC website, because that's kind of clunky, and there's a lot of settings in there you can overlook. So
yeah, it is very
the
easy.
output's better. Yeah,
it's very user friendly. You get on the FCC's site and you don't know how to search. There's so many ways to search, and unless you pick that exact same way and can find that drill down that works perfectly, it's very difficult. And you get a lot of superfluous information, like microwave stuff that you're not going to pick up on a scanner. So, but yeah, Norm has massaged that data down to where it's the stuff that scanner radio listeners want to have and be able to use, and that works great. It's a great resource for scanner listeners.
Excellent. I know too, sometimes when I look at stuff on the FCC site, unless you have the actual query, like you said, exactly right, it's going to say no match found, because it's going to be exactly how it's going to be on the FCC
right.
site. So having somebody, like I said, massage the data so it's a little bit more friendlier to use is definitely well worth it in my book as well. So besides the magazine, what else are you working on right now?
We have a couple of things in the stream that we're working on. We been mainly focused over the past 5 years since taking over the magazine is making sure we have a good publication, and it's something that our readers want and resonate with, and making sure we keep our readers happy, and not only that, but also maintain the level of readership that we've had over the years, and we've been successful at that. One of the unfortunate things with publications these days is the numbers decline. Your daily newspaper probably has anywhere from 1/2 to 1/3 of the readers it did 10 plus years ago. And magazines are on the same downside. It's very difficult for them to maintain the readership, and quite frankly, it's because of the internet. There's so many sources of information out there. We've been very successful at maintaining the same level of readership for our magazine over that time frame, and I've been very happy with that. And we do market the magazine and try and make sure that we have, because without readers, we're nothing. I mean, it comes right down to that. If we don't have the readers to look at the magazine, we may as well just hang it up. So we definitely try and keep our numbers up, and I'm very happy with that and very grateful that our readers continue to not only come forward as new readers to the magazine, but also continue to renew their online access accounts with us and continue to read the magazine over the years. So we have some very long-time readers, and we have some readers who come in for just a year maybe and then decide it's not their cup of tea, and that's fine. There are other readers who come along as well, and we were always trying to find those new readers. So it works out very well, and I think I've kind of deviated away from, the other things we have in the stream here is we are looking at producing a DVD for our readers. And you actually don't even need to be a reader to get access to it. This DVD will have back issues of the magazine on it, and we hope to announce that, if we haven't already announced it by the time this podcast is posted online. This DVD will be most likely in a couple different parts, and you can purchase the early years of the magazine, more recent years of the magazine, or the most recent year of the magazine, and that would all come on one DVD perhaps, rather than 1, 2, or 3 DVDs. And this would allow you to stick the DVD into your computer. You won't need internet. You just need Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Reader to read the magazine. And you can sit there and go back and forth to it. You don't need to download it. I know how difficult it will be for some to download that number of magazines from our website. So it'll be a great tool. People have asked us to produce this time and time again, and again, trying to be responsive to our readers' needs. We want to be able to move forward for that. So we hope at the time of that we're recording the podcast here, we hope to have that online very soon, and I hope by the time that the podcast goes online, that we will have that up and running, and there'll be an announcement on our website as well as our social media channels, and that information will be available for our readers to go online and purchase, and I think it'd be a great thing because it's something that they want.
Excellent. So the website again is what now?
www.natcom.com. NatCom Mag. And again, that's Nat is a national, NATCOM is in communications, and the mag, first part of magazine. So it's NATCOM, MAG, NatCommag.com. And there are links right on the homepage there to take you where you need to be.
Excellent. Yeah, I didn't want to say it the wrong way on the podcast and have you correct me. So that's
sure,
fine.
No problem.
I hesitated just a second. And then finding you, because you said before you do plenty of stuff on social media. Where can people find you on the social media channels?
Exactly. We're on most of the social media channels that we can right now. We're on Facebook. That's where we do most of our information. We're also on Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram as well. We just added that channel over the last month or so. And we're the same address on every social media channel, NatCom Mag. So if you go to facebook.com/NatCom Mag, you'll find us. Same with Twitter, same with Pinterest, and same with Instagram. We're the same address on each platform.
Excellent. How is that Pinterest working out for you? It's one of those unknown black hole social media channels I've never really played around with too much.
Sure. We initially started out just posting some covers of the magazine on there, but have kind of expanded that and using it some more in the past month. So the jury's still out as far as how that works for the magazine. There are a lot of radio hobbyists on Pinterest, and it's just trying to resonate with them on that platform. And I think that by taking the right approach, we'll get there.
Excellent. Yeah, I know I follow you on the other three, Facebook. I believe on Facebook. I definitely follow you on Instagram. I'm more of an Instagram user than a Facebook user, to be honest with you. And I know you posted the picture of the cake that had the CB radio on it the other day, and there's a couple other things on there that's always interesting. You guys have a really, really good Instagram feed. So I'm sure that the Twitter and the Facebook are very similar to that. So if somebody wants a little radio chuckle during the day, or a little bit of advice, or even just something, a little knowledge bomb in the middle of the afternoon, then definitely your your social media feeds are a good source of that, and kind of break up the day a little bit too as you're scrolling through the feed. So you guys do an excellent job on social media. So
right, we try and resonate with the readers. Once again, we may get a little off topic once in a while, something that the magazine itself doesn't cover, but that's okay, because we recognize that our readers are interested. We don't want to ignore that. It doesn't fit in the magazine, but yet it fits in our social media channels. So we have a lot of fun on social media and a lot of information. So definitely check us out.
Excellent. Yeah, it's definitely what social media is for. It's a little bit of a break from the everyday grind. All right, so this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed our time together. Do you have anything else you want to bring up before we go?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell your listeners about us, and look forward to having people check us out.
Excellent. So again, the website is natcommag.com, and all social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, NatCom Mag, and definitely look at subscribing to the magazine. I think it's well worth it, and maybe we'll see somebody else writing for the column sooner or later. So
there you go.
Chuck, thank you so much for your time, and I definitely appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing and explaining what National Communications Magazine is all about.
Thank you once again.
Okay, Chuck, thank you so much for being our guest today on Scanner School. Really appreciate you having the time to sit down and talk with us. So one thing that Chuck and I did not really discuss heavily is the subscription model for National Communications Magazine. This is all available online in their FAQ, so if something I don't explain here doesn't make sense to you, then you can go ahead and check it out there. And again, this is just me explaining things out here. This is my recommendation. It's a great magazine. I have no monetary ties, so they're not paying me for any of this stuff. This is strictly a recommendation. Great magazine. It's digital only, like we talked about in the podcast interview. Back in the day, it was digital. And the thing about digital was, if you wanted to hold on to the magazines and go through it, you had to keep digital prints. So again, like we talked about here, Chuck now has the back catalog of National Communications Magazine on DVD. So you can go back, and so instead of having all these magazines stacked up, you can just have one or two DVDs. Also, again, like we talked about on the podcast, if you subscribe, then you get the back catalog included. And I have to have the time, but to go back through and go through some of the magazines that I remember reading as a kid, I want to go back in there and look at some of the advertisements. I mean, nothing really beats going back and seeing the old advertisements on the old scanners and seeing what they're going for today, and kind of seeing what they went for back in the day, and then doing a quick calculation, finding out how much inflation would be and all that stuff. I want to do a whole podcast episode on that. Just look at a couple of the older popular scanners that were out and seeing what they went for back in the day and what they would have cost today, because I think think that's really an eye-opening thing when you talk about, what things cost and how outrageous things are. But when you think about how outrageous things are now and what they really were, yeah, that $200 scanner wasn't really $200 in today's money. So let's put it that way. But anyway, what I really want to drop in here too is, I want to make sure that you guys are clear that the magazine is every other month. Okay, it's a 6-month type of thing. So the magazine comes out on every odd month. If you subscribe in January, obviously you're going to get the full year's worth of magazines every other month. If you subscribe on a odd number month, say you subscribe in July, you'll get July's issue, and then your subscription will run out the following June. However, if you subscribed, say, in August, right, then you would get July's issue sent to you, but again, your subscription would expire the previous June, or next June, rather. So again, you're still going to get your 6 episodes. You're going to feel like it's a month shy of renewal, but it's really not. You're going to get the current Windows magazine. So again, if you subscribe in February, you'll get January's, and your subscription will still expire in December. You're not cutting yourself short, so don't wait until the top of the year. Don't wait until next month. So do it right away if you want to subscribe to National Communications Magazine. Again, they're all over social media. They have a pretty entertaining Instagram channel, so I definitely recommend going and checking them out on Instagram as well. So again, before we part ways, I also want to thank our Patreon supporters, in addition to Chuck being our guest today. So our Patreon supporters at the time of this recording, because I am now doing my recordings ahead of time, thanks to my Patreon supporters and being able to help me out with hiring some services, we have Dan, Glenn Bryden, James Felling, MT Bono, Raymond Hill, Todd Glendy. We also have Craig Harper, Guy Lee, John Goldenberg, Ken Newberry, Kenneth Fowler, Ronnie Bach, Sal Marandola, Scott Vorder, Signals Everywhere, William Arcan. I want to thank all of you for your continued support and allowing me the freedom to hand off the podcast editing to a professional. So I'm not doing these on Sunday nights. I greatly appreciate it. Now, if you also want to help support us in another way, you can do so by going right to scannerschool.com/support. We have the option of doing a one-time PayPal donation. If you are an Amazon shopper like I am, and I've talked about this in the past, I absolutely love Amazon. I get everything from Amazon. You go to scannerschool.com/support, click on Amazon, and when you make your shopping trip, guess what? We earn an Amazon affiliate on that. If you're looking for a radio from Scanner Master, software from Butel, we've got you covered with affiliate links on there as well. So if you're going to make another purchase, another piece of hardware or software, we've also got ways you can help us out with that as well. So in closing, all the session notes are online. Scannerschool.com/session94. Now, again, I asked Chuck to be a guest on this podcast, but if you have an idea for a podcast episode or you would like to be interviewed and be a guest and talk with your fellow Scanner School community, the fellow classmates, the fellow members of the Scanner Radio Club, just drop me a line, phil@scannerschool.com, or go right to scannerschool.com, click on the podcast, and there's a link in there to become a guest on the podcast. It takes you right to my calendar where you can schedule a time that works for the two of us. And it takes less than 5 minutes to do so. It's great. And, this podcast wouldn't be here without you guys. So, again, thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll catch you all again next week. My name is Phil Lichtenberger. This is Scanner School, where we teach you everything you need to know about the scanner radio hobby. 73, everyone.